I used to think the worst thing my family could do was ignore me. Turns out the worst thing they could do was notice me only when I had something they wanted to take. I remember the morning my entire life detonated with perfect, vicious clarity. It was a Tuesday in October, the kind of cold that sneaks inside your collar and stays there like a warning. I had just clicked my apartment door shut behind me, coffee burning my palm, keys jingling like tiny bells of freedom. I was already rehearsing the apology I'd give my supervisor for being 7 minutes late. Traffic, bad luck, whatever lie felt polite. I turned the corner toward the resident lot, expecting to see her waiting for me exactly where I'd left her. My midnight blue RAV4, 11 weeks old, still wearing that intoxicating new car smell, still carrying the weight of every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every no, I can't go out tonight, I'm saving. She was the first thing I had ever bought that was 100% mine. No cosigners.
No guilt trips.
No one else's name on the title. Instead, I saw an empty rectangle of wet concrete and two fresh, ugly skid marks clawing away into the street like the ground itself had been gutted and left bleeding oil. For one endless second, the entire world went silent. No delivery trucks, no dogs barking 3 floors up, no neighbor blasting reggaeton at 6:47 a.m. Just my heartbeat thundering in my ears and the sudden, animal certainty that I already knew exactly who had done this. Because only 4 people on the planet had a copy of that key. And 3 of them had spent my entire life proving that mine was just a temporary state until my sister decided she needed it more. My name is Mara Caldwell, 31, senior inventory analyst at a logistics firm downtown. The good daughter, the quiet one, the one who put herself through college scrubbing toilets at a nursing home at 3 a.m. while my older sister Elise jetted off to Ibiza on dad's credit
card.
The one who learned before kindergarten that if I made waves, the love got poured somewhere else. I stood in that empty space while the city woke up around me. Headlights flashing past, someone's bass thumping, a jogger's shoes slapping pavement, and something ancient inside my chest finally uncurled its fingers from around my throat. Not rage yet. Something colder. Something that felt like waking up after 31 years of sleepwalking through my own life. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, voice bright and breezy, like she hadn't just helped orchestrate Grand Theft Auto before the sun came up. Morning, baby. You're up early. My voice came out flat, almost curious, like I was asking about the weather. Where's my car, Mom? A tiny hiccup of silence. Then the soft, familiar chuckle that had talked me out of every boundary I'd ever tried to draw since I was 5 years old. Oh, honey. Don't have a conniption fit. We let Elise take it. Her Jeep died again, transmission this time, and she had that big interview in Dayton. You weren't using it at 2 in the morning when she needed it.
2 in the morning.
Dad had gotten out of bed, driven across the city in the dark, met Elise in my parking lot, handed her my spare key like it was a pack of gum, and never once considered knocking on my door to ask the owner for permission. I felt the cold slide under my coat, under my skin, all the way into my bone marrow. Put it back by tonight, I said. The words tasted like iron. Or I'm reporting it stolen. She actually laughed. My mother laughed at the idea that I might finally fight back. Mara, sweetheart, it's not stolen. It's family. Elise swore she'd fill the tank, and everything. You're being dramatic again. You always do this.
Dramatic.
That single word had been a collar around my neck for 3 decades. I ended the call without another word. I stood in the empty parking spot for another full minute, watching my breath bloom and vanish in the frozen air, feeling the exact moment the old Mara, the one who apologized for existing too loudly, died right there on the wet concrete. Then I opened my phone again, scrolled past Mom, past Dad, past Elise's contact photo, her sticking her tongue out at some rooftop bar, champagne flute raised like a weapon, and dialed 911. The dispatcher didn't even sound surprised. I guess she'd heard every version of this story before. My vehicle was taken from my parking space without my consent, I said. My voice was so steady it scared me. By my own family. Stay where you are, ma'am. An officer is en route. Officer Delgado arrived so fast I wondered if the universe had been waiting for me to finally say no. He was tall, calm eyes, the kind of quiet authority that makes you believe rules still matter in this world. He listened while I laid it all out. How Dad had insisted on a spare key the day I moved in for emergencies only. How Elise had demolished 6 cars in 8 years. One into a church van full of nuns. One into a lake because she was live streaming. How my parents truly, genuinely believed that love meant never saying no to their favorite child, even if it meant stealing from the other one. He never interrupted. Just wrote everything down in neat, deliberate strokes. So you're the sole owner? Title, registration, loan. All only your name? Yes. No permission given to anyone, parents, sister, no one, to move the vehicle? 0. He clicked his pen once. Do you want to report this as unauthorized use of a motor vehicle? I thought of Elise behind my wheel, windows down, music loud enough to rattle the frame, cigarette dangling from her lips, texting at red lights, painting her nails, doing every single thing that had turned every car she ever touched into scrap metal. I thought of every Christmas I worked retail while Elise got a new wardrobe because she'd accidentally set the old one on fire during a fight with her boyfriend. I thought of the night I was 17 and came home from my 3rd shift to find my savings jar empty because Elise needed gas money for a job interview that never actually existed. I thought of the way Mom's voice always softened like honey for Elise and turned to vinegar the second I dared to have feelings. Yes, I said. I want to report it. He nodded like he'd been waiting 31 years for me to say it. My phone started detonating before he even finished the report. Mom, you cannot possibly be serious right now. Dad. Mara, call me immediately. We need to talk like adults. Elise, wow, you actually called the cops on your own sister? Over a fucking CAR? You are literally dead to me. I handed the phone to Officer Delgado, so he could photograph every text. Your sister just confessed in writing, he said quietly, and threatened you. This will be very, very clean.
Clean.
I almost laughed at how filthy every other part of my life had always been. By the time I borrowed my neighbor Anna's car and got to work, explaining to my boss that yes, I was late because my family stole my vehicle, there were 89 missed calls and 3 voicemails from Elise that got progressively drunker and crueler. The last one ended with her laughing through tears. I hope you die alone in that ugly little car you love more than your own blood, you cold, jealous bitch. I saved it. I saved every single one. For hours later, Officer Delgado called back. We located your RAV4. My knees almost buckled from relief. Is Elise. It's in City Impound on the south side. She abandoned it in a loading zone the second she realized every patrol car in central Ohio was hunting for it. A pause long enough to hear my heart stop. Marth, you need to come see this yourself. I drove across the city with the windows down because I needed the cold to keep me from screaming into the void. The impound lot smelled like burnt rubber, broken glass, and the particular kind of despair that only comes from seeing something you loved destroyed on purpose. And there she was, my beautiful 11-week-old car. Front end crumpled like tinfoil. Hood ornament ripped clean off. Both side mirrors dangling by wires like broken limbs. A gouge so deep down the driver's door it exposed raw metal, like someone had taken a house key and dragged it the entire length while laughing hysterically. The interior was a crime scene of pure, distilled rage. Empty White Claw cans rolling under the seats. Cigarette burns melted into the upholstery like bullet holes. A half-eaten burrito ground into the carpet like abstract art. Lipstick smeared across the ceiling, actual lipstick prints, like she'd kissed it over and over. And across the entire back window, scrawled in that same cheap drugstore red, liar, thief, ugly, jealous,
D.
Officer Delgado stood beside me while I took it in, piece by ruined piece. Front-end damage consistent with at least one unreported collision, he said gently. Key marks are deliberate, same pressure, same angle, full length of the vehicle. Lipstick message, too. We found the tube on the floorboard. Her prints all over it. We also found a glass pipe wedged under the passenger seat. I touched the gouged paint. My finger came away red. She didn't just take my car, I whispered. She murdered it. Looks that way, he said. And she wanted you to know it was personal. That was the moment the last thread snapped. I turned to him, tears freezing on my face in the January wind. I want every single charge you can possibly file. I want her to feel this in her bones. He didn't try to talk me out of it. He just opened a fresh page in his notebook and started writing. 2 days later, the insurance adjuster walked around the wreckage shaking his head like he'd seen war zones with less damage. Total loss, he said almost cheerfully. Congratulations, you're getting a very nice check.
They
Paid me $38,200 after the deductible. More than I owed. Enough for a new car, a new security system, a deposit on a new apartment with a gated garage, and the first year of therapy I suddenly realized I'd needed since I was 9 years old. Elise got picked up 9 days after the theft. She blew through a red light doing 65 downtown, got lit up for a reckless operation, and the second the officer ran my plates, every computer in the state screamed bloody murder. She spent 6 nights in county lockup before Mom and Dad could sell their camper to post bail. The mugshot that hit the family group chat made her look 40 instead of 33. Eyes sunken, hair greasy, and pulled back with a rubber band. The smirk finally gone. For the first time in my entire life, my sister looked small. Court was in January, the kind of cold that makes your soul ache. I wore the black dress I saved for funerals, because that's exactly what this felt like. The funeral of the family I had spent 31 years killing myself to keep alive. Mom and Dad sat on the opposite side of the gallery. Mom kept trying to catch my eye like a drowning person reaching for a rope that was never thrown. I stared straight ahead. Elise shuffled in wearing orange, wrists cuffed to a belly chain around her waist. She'd lost at least 20 pounds. When the bailiff removed the cuffs, she rubbed her wrists like she couldn't believe they were still attached to her body. The prosecutor laid it out like he was reading the closing chapter of a very long, very tragic book. Unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, felony. Criminal damaging. Vandalism over $7,500. Driving under suspension, 4th offense. 2 bench warrants from separate counties. Possession of drug paraphernalia. Reckless operation. Leaving the scene of an accident, she'd sideswiped a parked Prius and kept going. The judge was a woman with steel gray hair and a voice like winter itself. She read Elise's driving record like a horror novel, pausing after every totaled car, every suspended license, every missed court date, every time the system had handed her mercy, and she'd thrown it back in its face. Then she looked up. Ms. Caldwell, you have been extended more leniency than most people get in 3 lifetimes. And every single time you have treated the court's mercy like toilet paper. Mom made a sound like a wounded animal from the gallery. I am sentencing you to 180 days in county jail. 120 suspended upon successful completion of 3 years supervised probation. You will serve 60 days immediately. Driver's license revoked indefinitely. You may petition for reinstatement in 10 years if you remain spotless. Full restitution to the victim in the amount of $9,400. Permanent no-contact order with the victim. 500 hours community service. Certified anger management. Random drug testing twice weekly. Elise swayed on her feet like the words had physically hit her. This is not a suggestion, the judge said. This is the last chance the state of Ohio will ever give you. Do you understand? Elise's voice was barely air. Yes, Your Honor. The bailiff took her away. She never once looked at me. Mom tried to grab my arm in the hallway, fingers clawing like she could drag me back into the old story by force. Mara, please. I stepped around her like she was a puddle of something toxic. Dad called my name once, voice cracking like thin ice under too much weight. I kept walking. I bought a new car the next week. Pearl white. Fingerprint ignition. No spare key for anyone, not even hidden under the mat for emergencies. I moved to a new apartment on the north side with a gated garage, cameras on every corner, and a doorman who doesn't know my last name. I blocked every number that had ever hurt me. 6 months later, I ran into my cousin at the grocery store. She hugged me. awkwardly and whispered, "Elise is out. Living in a sober house off Hudson. Takes 3 buses to sling fries at Wendy's. Mom and Dad had to refinance the house to pay her restitution and her lawyer. They sold the boat too." I nodded. Bought my salmon, my wine, my fancy cheese I never used to let myself have. Went home and cooked dinner for one. Sometimes on quiet nights, I still hear that first morning, the empty space, the skid marks, the exact second I chose myself over the lie they told about who I was allowed to be. People ask if I feel guilty. I tell them the truth. I didn't send my sister to jail. Her choices marched her there in handcuffs long before I ever dialed 911. I just stopped being the person who volunteered to pay the cover charge for someone else's lifelong bender. And for the first time in 31 years, the silence in my apartment doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like the first clean breath I've ever taken in my entire life. So tell me, when the people who are supposed to love you most keep proving they only love what you can give them, when do you finally stop apologizing for taking your own life back? Drop your story below. You're not the monster for refusing to burn anymore. You're just the one who finally walked out of the fire carrying yourself.